Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Communicating Science in Africa. I am your host, Joseph Solomon. And with me, our guest in the studio today is Mr. Anderson Tindaki. Mr. Anderson, you are welcome to Communicating Science in Africa.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. So, Nigeria is a country blessed with abundant resources, fertile land, with some of the best brains in the world. Yet, she finds herself facing several socio-economic challenges such as hunger, poverty, crime, unemployment, and all other factors attributed to her being a third world country. From your perspective, where did Nigeria get it wrong?
Nigeria has been having issues for long, but it got escalated in 2015
And how did Nigeria get it wrong in 2015?
when it failed to re-elect its leader who was growing the economy.
Okay, so Nigeria got it wrong in 2015 when
sir.
the people failed to re-elect the then leader who was growing the economy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so from 2015 till date, what actually led to the economic downfall?
It is the diversion from agriculture, which was the mainstay of the economy, focusing on crude oil production, and then dependency in foreign-made goods rather than homemade goods, which is a threat to our economy and forex reserve.
Okay, so are you actually saying that the diversion from agriculture to focus more on oil production is one of the reasons our economy is shrinking?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but we have other oil producing countries such as Saudi Arabia, Russia, Kuwait, Jordan, just a few to mention, that are actually using their oil monies to invest and grow the economy. So if other oil producing countries could be able to invest and grow their economies, then what's the Nigerian excuse?
There are a lot of reasons, right? These reasons are no functioning refineries. There are cases of no transparency in governance, which is corruption. There are oil thefts, right? And are also vandals.
Okay. Okay. So now, are you actually saying that if we return back to agriculture, the hunger, poverty, unemployment will lessen, and then the economy will start growing as it used to?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. What does she actually need to do now?
Going back to agriculture alone cannot grow the economy. So she needs to work with what crude oil production, which she needs to match the two together. Right? Now, what she needs to do in the agricultural sector is to invest in mechanized farming, also give farmers loans that we may focus on local production. The consumption there will be what? Right? Now, you also need to tackle insecurity because these are the reasons why these local farmers can farm and produce for national world.
Okay.
Now, also in the crude oil sector, you need to tackle vandals, you need to tackle oil theft, you need to there should be transparency in governance. There should be transparency in governance, and also we should have our own working refineries. And also she should have technologies, right? Technologies that will be beneficial to what the
Okay, that's for track record.
yes. For track record.
Okay. So according to, in reality and in news, we see how hunger has eaten deep into the nation, because according to Global Hunger Index, Nigeria was ranked at number 110 out of 127 countries that are facing severe hunger. So if we could have this vast uncultivated land, yet the hunger is biting, and the federal government of Nigeria published a data in 2020 which shows that over 133 million Nigerians are living in poverty. So what's in the Nigerian case, what's the actual cause of this hunger and poverty?
There are few towards there are major reasons, right? Now these major reasons are what? Governmental work policies.
Okay, and what are these governmental policies, if I may ask?
We have um, subsidy removal,
Mm-hmm.
low minimum wage,
Mm-hmm.
lack of proper price control system,
Mm-hmm. Inflation.
and also they have cases of what? Inflation.
Okay. So now, but is hunger a governmental or a societal problem? I mean, is the government responsible to feed the citizens, or the citizens are responsible to feed themselves?
Hunger, right, is a societal problem, but the government has their own role to play.
And what are these roles that the government needs to play?
Is to cut down inflation,
Mm-hmm.
put in subsidy,
Mm-hmm.
tackle inflation,
Mm-hmm.
and also um, there should be transparency in governance. Also,
Okay.
they should also increase
Minimum wage.
minimum wage. Yeah, they should also increase minimum wage.
Okay.
Because that alone
Mm.
will be able to what sustain somewhat families.
Okay, so now permit me to say this, that in the Nigerian case, the government is not the actual cause of hunger and poverty.
Then what's the problem?
The problem here is simply because the Nigerian population is growing faster than the economy. I mean, making resources and food itself short for the masses at hand.
Okay. So are you trying to say here that population is the problem?
Yes, the Nigerian population is the problem because it is growing faster than the economy, making food and resources insufficient for the growing population, because the Nigerian population is growing at 2.39% annually, while the Nigerian economy is growing at minus 2% annually. Now, making the food production and then the resources at hand insufficient for the rapid population growing.
You blame population for hunger and poverty, right? Now, what of China, who has over 1.4 billion population, and she's doing, her economy is moving fine, and her citizens are doing well? How can you justify this?
China,
Yes.
China that has over 400 million people living below the international poverty line.
Mind you that that's a Western media propaganda.
Western media propaganda, when I have facts to back up my statistics.
So what are these facts?
Okay.
To back up the statistics.
Okay. Now, in the year 1979, China had 969 million people, and 97% of them were poor. But within 40 years, over 800 million were uplifted, according to a data published by the World Bank, and there are now 1.4 billion people. That was in 2022. Now, do the simple arithmetic. If China had 969 million people, and in 1979, and 97% of them were poor, but within 40 years, over 800 million were lifted. That was in 2022. Then how many do you see are left below the international poverty line out of 1.4 billion people that they are now?
Mind you that this is Western media propaganda.
Okay.
Now, the Asian Times stated that the people below the poverty line are just 56 million. I don't know where you got your statistics from.
I got my statistics from the World Bank that publishes data of each country. Now, let me remind you that there is national poverty line and then there is international poverty line. And how this international poverty line is being carried is based on the number of individuals who earn less than $2 a day in each economy. But in the national poverty line, it is being carried based on the nation's economic metrics. So it is possible that the Chinese, that's in the national economic metrics, they are just 56 million people, but in the international level they are more than that, because and how it is being carried, just like I said, is based on the number of individuals who earn less than $2 a day. So when you convert one Chinese yen to $1, you can see that the Chinese yen is not more than the dollar. So when you convert it, that's the number of Chinese that earn that, they are actually more than that 400 million people, just like I.
China adds another 480 million people, making less than $2 a day.
And let me also remind you that how China was able to achieve this milestone was through a policy known as population control policy. That was the one they had in 1979, when the government locked the border and asked and they locked the border and stopped immigration. That is, no one could enter nor go out except with the government's authority. And then she also asked the Chinese families to engage in the policy known as a one-child policy. That was in 1979, when she asked each Chinese family to give birth to only one child, and 97% of the Chinese families adhered to that. And the aim of this policy was simply to make sure that the population is growing at a slower rate while the economy grows faster, and then for the government to be able to know the number of children who may be born in a certain year and help them, because China was facing severe famine, that's hunger extreme, but this policy was what the government adapted to, that helped them combat their hunger and poverty to grow their economy. But in the Nigerian case, can that be done?
It can't happen, right? Because Nigeria is multi-ethnic and multi-religious. Children are seen as a form of blessing.
Okay, now, good. You were the one that said Nigeria got it wrong when she failed to re-elect the then leader who was growing the economy, right? Now, this leader is no any other person than Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. He was the first leader in the Nigerian history to give us a $500 billion economy. That was 574 billion US dollar. According to the federal government of Nigeria, that's the data they released as at then. And ever since he left office, the gross domestic product started dropping from that 577 billion US dollar down to 295. That was the last time I checked. So when he was growing the economy, he saw that for him to do more, he needed one policy. And what was this policy? It was simply the family planning and birth control policy, just like you said. But people like you kicked against his idea by simply saying that, oh, what about China with 1.4 billion people, yet they are doing fine. Meanwhile, we did not take our time to study the demographic of China. He said some of the issues that the solutions to our problems are simply to subsidize, to put up a price control regulatory system, and then to cut down inflation, and then to make our refineries functioning. But let me remind you that from 2010 down to 2014, we had one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, where it was growing at 6% annually down to 8% annually. Yet, Nigerians complained of facing severe hunger and poverty. Now, if we could have subsidy, price control, the inflation was way lesser than it is, and we're producing about 2.5 million barrels of oil per day. I think the only time that the subsidy was removed was in January 1st, 2012, when the fuel price skyrocketed from 65 naira to 95 naira, and then which led, and then the currency depreciated from 155 naira to 185 naira. Then Nigerians took to the streets by saying that he wanted to kill them with inflation. Then he returned it back. So if only we had known the plan that he had for us, then we wouldn't have been complaining today. So I think the only flaws he had was insecurity. And just in case you have not read his book, I urge you to go read one of his books known as My Transition Hours, where he talked about today's Nigerian problem. And that problem is insecurity that he was blamed for. But just in case you have not read the book, he stated the major cause of that insecurity. So I urge you to read the book. But then we had one of the fastest growing economies in Africa and the world. So, just like I earlier said, he was growing the economy, and he saw that for him to do more, a proper family planning and birth control was needed, where he said the uneducated people were having too many children, and he said that, hey, families should go and engage in family planning and birth control. Yet Nigerians, just like you said, use China as a case of study and even called him an incompetent leader, despite the fact that he was one of the best leaders we have ever had. Because when your gross domestic product is growing, the per capita income rises and the purchasing power parity also grows. But when it is crumbling, then the purchasing power parity and per capita income is depreciating. But if we could have all these things in place, just like you said, subsidy, price control, our refineries were functioning and the inflation was way lesser than it is, yet Nigerians complained, then hunger and poverty to some extent is not a governmental problem but a societal problem.
Okay. All this, right? They can't stop us from growing as a what? As a nation. The problem is there's no proper capital distribution in the world, in the nation. Population also is a drive for us what? To the what? National what? Development. Now they are what? Aging population. Now who will replace this aging population?
Good. Now, this is not a globalist idea of wanting to reduce the Nigerian population or world's population, as being said, but because empiricism and rationalism have proven that fertility rate plays a vital role in poverty alleviation. There is nowhere in the part of the world where you want to talk about ending hunger and poverty without engaging or adapting to a proper family planning and birth control policy. I think the problem here is not about the population now. I mean, okay, China has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world at 1.55 per 1,000 births, while in the Nigerian fertility rate, the total fertility rate is at 5.009 per 1,000 births. Now, the average Chinese family size is 2.0 persons, while that of the Nigerian is 5.0 persons, right? So the problem here is they can still be a replacement for the aging population. I think the problem here is that the Chinese fertility rate is too low, while that of the Nigerian is too high. So the balanced one should be 2.1 percent, that's per 1,000 births, to replace the aging population. And just like I said, it is very rare for you to find one Chinese man with more than one wife or two children, but very common to find a Nigerian man with more than one wife and two children. Yet you expect the government to provide for this kind of man, or for the man to be able to pay bills for his large family size. So I'm still repeating myself by saying that despite the fact that we had subsidy, we had price control, our refineries were functioning, the economy was not that bad as it is today, yet Nigerians complained and refused to re-elect the then leader, believing that he was the one imposing the pains on them. That's the hardship among families. So shouldn't common sense tell us that this is not a governmental but a societal problem that needs to be tackled?
Agriculture alone, right, can tackle both poverty and hunger.
Okay.
Now, what the nation Nigeria or the federal government needs to do is to invest in merchandise farming and also give farmers loans. But the majority are into agriculture, while just 1% are into crude oil production. 1% have the refineries, and 99% are into agricultural agriculture. So if Nigeria can invest in agriculture, this alone can what? Crop hunger and poverty.
Okay, now we are not actually saying that population does not serve as a drive force, but mind you, we are just saying that the Nigerian population is a barrier in terms of poverty alleviation and hunger eradication. In the Nigerian case now, child labor is on the rise. These are children that we have over 20 million out of school children who later turn out to become beggars in the streets, and then we see beggars on our highways begging just to get food. And it's not as if now we are trying to shame anyone publicly, but now we are saying that to tackle these things we need to put a proper family planning and birth control policy, right, before the government can be able to invest in these families. That is just the point we are saying. We are not actually saying that they should stop giving birth, but now this is a problem where that we need to be tackled, that needs to be tackled. And these are the same people that during election they meet and give them pennies, chicken change with just some food item, then they vote the worst set of leaders to represent them. So you see what hunger has done to our land, and for us to be able to curb it, that is why we are now saying that families should limit the size of children they may born so that they can be able to cater for them, just as it is being done in other parts of the world.
Birth control policy and the family planning policy, right? It's a good idea. But the problem is Nigeria is what? Mind you that this population, right, is a what drive force to our what nation economy. Now back in the 60s down to 90s, like the money gotten from agriculture is the reason we have the refineries today. We have these industries today, and it was also an advantage to economic growth and what development.
Okay, so now you actually said that Nigeria has been having these issues for long, but so how do you compare these issues then and now? I mean, are they more serious in then or less serious now? Because from 1960 down till 1999, I think that was when we had independence. So we had 33 years of military regime, and then we are just 26 years into democracy. So how do you compare the issues then and that in the military regime and in the democratic era?
Now the issues now are more serious than the military was era.
Okay.
Because then in the military era, corruption was tackled, insecurity was tackled, and also population was used as a drive force towards national growth and development. That's why you see we have these industries today, and also there were proper capital distribution.
Okay, so now are you actually saying that our military regime is better than democracy?
Going back to the military regime, right, it's like going back to the primary school, right, which is not a good idea. Now the problem is Nigeria failed to understand this thing called democracy. Now what's this democracy? Democracy is a system of government whereby the supreme power is being vested by the citizens of the country.
Okay, so what's actually stopping Nigerians to vote competence over what's stopping Nigerians to vote the competent leaders to govern them?
It is disunity caused by religious sentiments and tribalism.
Okay, so do you see Nigerians putting their indifferences and uniting to vote competence over religious and or tribal affiliation?
Yes, I see that happening in no time. And God bless my nation, Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to an end of the show that's communicating science in Africa. We had a 30-minute brilliant conversation with our guest, Mr. Anderson, where we talked about the Nigeria's problems, that's the socio-economic challenges, and we proffered some solutions that if done, we can be able to at least go to somewhere. So even without the governmental support, despite the fact that yes, the government has a role to play. So unfortunately, we have come come to an end of the show. I am your favorite host, Joseph Solomon, and don't forget to follow us on all social media handles showing right in your screen, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and comment and share for other audience to see. This is our first episode. We will see you in our next episode, Communicating Science in Africa. Thank you.